Henry Dawson sat at the dinner table, the golden light flickering across his grandson's nervous face. The boy's hands trembled as he slid a folded note beneath the tablecloth. "Grandpa," it read. "Check the storage unit Dad rented last month. Unit 247. The code is Mom's birthday backwards. Please do it before Friday." Henry looked up, but 15-year-old Ethan kept staring at his plate, pretending to eat while his stepmother, Claire, chatted cheerfully about her latest shopping trip. In that quiet moment, Henry's heart sank. Something was terribly, terribly wrong. Henry was 67 and lived alone in a modest home in Winnipeg, Manitoba. 3 years earlier, he had lost his wife, Margaret, to cancer. The grief had carved a deep hollow inside him, but it had hit his only son, Daniel, even harder. Daniel was 42 when his mother died, and he'd fallen into a long, gray silence afterward. So when he met Claire at a charity event barely a year later, Henry had tried to be supportive. She was beautiful, graceful, and quick to charm anyone in the room. Within 7 months, they were married. At first, Henry wanted to believe Claire was the light Daniel needed. She called Henry Dad, brought homemade casseroles, and asked about his old woodworking projects as if she cared. For a while, even Ethan seemed happy. The boy told Henry his dad was smiling again, laughing more, trying to live. But then, 6 months ago, things began to shift. Daniel lost weight, his hands trembled, and he often forgot where he parked his car. When Henry asked, Daniel blamed stress at his accounting firm, something about a merger. Henry wanted to believe him, but the unease kept growing. Ethan noticed it too. During his visits, the boy watched his father with cautious eyes. "He forgets things, Grandpa," Ethan whispered one afternoon. "He calls me by Mom's name sometimes." Henry wanted to take action, but every time he tried to talk to his grandson about it, the boy clammed up, afraid of saying too much. Then came the family dinner last Tuesday. Claire made roast chicken and mashed potatoes. Daniel barely touched his plate. Claire smiled sweetly and said, "You need to eat, honey. Keep your strength up." The words sounded gentle, but Henry felt the chill behind them. That night, Henry couldn't sleep. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, Ethan's note burning in his mind. By dawn, he'd made up his mind. He drove to the storage facility on Pembina Highway, a long building with orange doors stretching endlessly down both sides. His heart thudded as he entered the code, 421987. The lock clicked open. Inside were 3 plain boxes stacked neatly in the corner. Henry pulled out his phone flashlight and opened the first one. What he saw made his knees weak. A new will signed 2 months ago, leaving everything Daniel owned to Claire, with Ethan's name nowhere in sight. Henry crouched in the dim light of the storage unit, the paper trembling in his hands. The will looked real enough. The signature resembled Daniel's, but something about it felt wrong. Daniel always looped his D and crossed his T with a long horizontal stroke, just like his late mother used to. This signature didn't have that. "No," Henry muttered, his stomach twisting. "This isn't his hand." He snapped pictures of every page with his phone, his breath coming faster. Whoever had forged it had made one mistake. They underestimated how well a father remembers his son's handwriting. He opened the second box and his breath caught. Inside were medical items. Syringes, sealed bottles of medicine he didn't recognize, latex gloves, and a small notebook. The handwriting inside was neat, precise, almost clinical. June 12th. Increased confusion. Forgot coworker's name. July 3rd, tremors worsening. Balance unstable. Henry's pulse thundered. These weren't doctor's notes, they were Claire's. And she wasn't tracking an illness. She was recording its progress. He picked up one medicine bottle and quickly searched it on his phone. Scopolamine. His blood ran cold. High doses could cause memory loss, confusion, or death. His son wasn't sick, he was being poisoned. Henry forced himself to open the third box. His vision blurred as he stared at what lay inside. Printed photos of himself. Dozens of them. Some taken from the street outside his house, others from the grocery store, his morning walks. There were even bank statements and a floor plan of his home with his bedroom and study circled. And at the very bottom lay his life insurance policy, the same one that made Daniel the beneficiary years ago. A sticky note was attached with one word written in a woman's elegant handwriting. Next. Henry stumbled backward, clutching his chest. Claire wasn't just after Daniel. She was coming for him too. By the time he returned home, Henry's hands were shaking so badly he could hardly lock the door. He sat at his kitchen table, staring at the photos on his phone, the notebook entries, the forged will. He couldn't just run to the police. Not yet. Claire was clever. She'd say Daniel asked her to manage his medication. She'd call the will updated. He needed real proof. Proof that couldn't be explained away. That night Ethan called. "Did you go, Grandpa?" His voice was small, trembling. "I saw everything," Henry whispered. "How did you know about the storage unit?" Ethan paused. "I followed her." The boy's words hit Henry like a blow. "You what?" he whispered. Ethan explained how he'd seen Claire load boxes into her car and followed her on his bike, hiding behind parked trucks until she left the building. "I tried a few combinations until one worked," the boy said. "She thinks I don't notice, Grandpa, but she's putting stuff in Dad's coffee." Henry's throat tightened. "You listen to me," he said quietly. "Don't eat or drink anything she gives you. Ever. Make your own food. I'm going to fix this, but you have to stay safe." Ethan sniffled. "I can do that, Grandpa. But hurry," she said. Friday's the perfect day. Henry hung up and sat in silence for a long time, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. Friday. That was only 2 days away. He needed help, someone who would believe him without proof. He picked up the phone and called Bill Harper, an old friend who had retired from the Winnipeg police after 35 years. "Bill," Henry said, his voice shaking, "I think my daughter-in-law is poisoning my son." There was a long pause on the line. Then Bill's calm, steady voice came through. "Start from the beginning, Henry. Tell me everything." Henry told him about the note, the storage unit, the forged will, the medicine, the surveillance photos. Bill didn't interrupt. When Henry finished, the silence on the other end stretched until Bill finally spoke. "You've got something real here, but you need solid evidence. A judge won't move on suspicions. We need her caught in the act. Here's what I want you to do." Bill's plan was risky. It meant Henry would have to move into Daniel's house and pretend everything was normal. "You up for this?" Bill asked. Henry's answer came without hesitation. "For my son and grandson. Always." The next morning, Henry called Claire. He made his voice tremble slightly, just enough to sound like a worried old man. "Claire dear," he began, "I'm so worried about Daniel. He looked terrible at dinner. I was thinking maybe I should come stay with you too for a while, help around the house." There was a brief silence, then Claire's syrupy tone returned. "Oh Dad, that's sweet, but really we're fine. Daniel just needs rest." Henry pressed on gently. "I lost Margaret, Claire. I can't lose Daniel too. Please let me help." Another pause. Then a soft sigh. "Well, if it means that much to you." By mid-afternoon, Henry was standing on his son's doorstep with a duffel bag. Daniel answered, looking frail and pale, his hands trembling. "Dad, what are you doing here?" Henry smiled warmly. "Your wife invited me, son. Thought I could help for a few days." Claire appeared behind Daniel, her perfect smile in place. "Come in, Dad. I've set up the guest room for you." Henry stepped inside, his heart hammering. Inside the bag, beneath his clothes, were 3 tiny wireless cameras, motion-activated, courtesy of Bill. He'd come not just to help, but to expose the truth. That night, while Claire was in the kitchen and Daniel rested upstairs, Henry placed the cameras. One behind the cookbook stand facing the counter and coffee maker, another on the hutch in the dining room, and the last in the upstairs hallway. When Ethan came down for dinner, Henry greeted him casually. "Hey champ, How's school? Fine, Ethan replied quietly, understanding the act. Dinner was spaghetti and meatballs. Henry watched closely as Claire plated the food. Daniel's plate came from a separate pot. When she thought no one was watching, she sprinkled something extra on top. Henry's stomach turned. He forced a smile and played along, chatting about old times and complimenting the food. Daniel ate slowly, mechanically. After dinner, Claire offered to make tea. Henry agreed, watching her every move. She poured boiling water, added sugar, and slid a cup toward him. "You've been such a help already, Dad," she said sweetly. "It's nice having family close." Henry sipped his tea carefully. Nothing tasted strange. "I'm glad to be here," he replied, letting his voice waver. "After losing Margaret, I realized how precious family really is." Claire smiled, but her eyes were cold. Later that night, Henry lay awake watching the live camera feeds on his laptop. Just before midnight, movement flickered on the kitchen feed. Claire, in her robe, tiptoed downstairs. Henry held his breath as she reached into the high cabinet, retrieved a small bottle and syringe, and carefully measured liquid into Daniel's coffee grounds. Then she stirred, sealed the container, and returned everything to its hiding spot. Henry's heart pounded. He had her clear, undeniable proof. But Bill's warning echoed in his mind. "Don't confront her. Not yet. Let the police move when we're ready." At dawn, Henry acted first. He went downstairs, dumped the tainted coffee grounds into the garbage disposal, and replaced them with a new batch from the pantry. When Claire entered the kitchen, she paused. "You're up early, Dad." Henry smiled over his newspaper. "Old habit. Couldn't sleep. I made a fresh pot of coffee. Ran out of the blend Daniel likes, so I opened a new one. Hope that's all right." For a second, her smile faltered, then returned. "Of course. That's fine." Her voice was calm, but her eyes had narrowed just slightly. Daniel came downstairs looking even worse than the night before. His voice was slow, slurred. "Didn't sleep much," he mumbled. "Feel dizzy." Claire fluttered around him, feigning concern. "Maybe we should wait for your appointment this afternoon." Henry shook his head. "He needs a hospital now." "I said he's fine," Claire snapped before softening her tone. "The specialist will see him at 2. Henry caught Ethan's eye across the table. The boy's face was pale with fear. He'd heard every word. Before Henry could respond, the doorbell rang. Claire opened the door, her voice crisp and polite. "Can I help you?" "Detective Sarah Miller, Winnipeg Police," a woman replied, flashing her badge. "We have a warrant to search the premises." Claire's face drained of color. "Search? For what?" "For evidence of poisoning and forgery," the detective said calmly. 2 uniformed officers stepped inside, followed by another detective. Henry stood. "Officers, I can help. I have footage you'll want to see." Claire spun toward him, her face twisted. "You've been spying on us." Henry met her glare, steady and cold. "No, Claire. I've been protecting my son." The house erupted in chaos. Officers moved through every room, opening drawers and cabinets, photographing everything. Detective Miller took Henry's phone, downloading the hidden camera footage that showed Claire poisoning the coffee grounds. Claire's voice shook as she tried to defend herself. "This is insane. Daniel's sick, I'm just helping him." But Henry's calm voice cut through her protests. "Helping him? You were killing him, Claire." Daniel sat weakly at the kitchen table, dazed and confused, barely understanding what was happening. Ethan stood frozen in the doorway, his knuckles white around his backpack straps, watching his family unravel. An officer called from upstairs. "Detective, you'll want to see this." They carried down a towel wrapped around several syringes and bottles identical to the ones Henry had found in the storage unit. Each was labeled scopolamine. Detective Miller's expression hardened. "That's enough." He turned to Claire. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for attempted murder, forgery, and fraud." Claire's mask cracked at last. "No. You can't do this." "Daniel, tell them." But Daniel could only stare at her, confused, trembling, his voice breaking. "Claire, what did you do to me?" The officers pulled her hands behind her back as she screamed and kicked. They also took her brother into custody that same afternoon after finding his fingerprints on the forged will. The story spread fast among the neighbors, but Henry stayed quiet. He only cared about one thing: saving his son. Daniel was rushed to the hospital under police escort. Tests confirmed Henry's fear. He'd been poisoned for months. The doctor said if the dosage had continued even one more week, Daniel might not have survived. Henry sat by his bedside that night, holding his son's trembling hand. "You're going to be all right, Danny," he whispered. "She can't hurt you anymore." The following days blurred together. Daniel drifted in and out of sleep while doctors treated the toxins in his system. Ethan stayed with Henry, sleeping in the guest room and refusing to leave his father's side during visiting hours. One evening, as the hospital lights dimmed, Ethan broke down, his small voice cracking. "I should have told you sooner, Grandpa. I knew something was wrong. I was so scared." Henry pulled him close. "You did the bravest thing, son. You saved your father's life. Don't you ever think otherwise?" The boy nodded against his chest, tears soaking Henry's shirt. Weeks passed before Daniel was strong enough to return home. His recovery was slow. Both his body and his heart had been deeply damaged. The betrayal ran deeper than any wound medicine could heal. "I loved her," he said one night, staring at his hands. "I thought she cared." Henry sighed. "Evil often comes dressed as kindness, son. But what matters is you're here. We're still together." Ethan sat nearby, listening quietly. That night, for the first time in months, they ate dinner together at Henry's house. Just the three of them. The silence between bites wasn't awkward. It was healing. Months later, the trial began. The courtroom was packed, reporters buzzing in every corner. Claire looked smaller somehow, sitting at the defense table in a gray suit, her perfect composure replaced by bitterness. Henry testified first, showing the video evidence and the photos from the storage unit. Then the prosecutor brought in the toxicology reports, the notebook of drug dosages, and the forensic report proving the signature on the will was forged. When Claire saw the footage of herself pouring the liquid into the coffee grounds, she turned pale. Ethan couldn't even look at her. The defense tried to claim Daniel's condition had been psychological, that Claire was merely documenting symptoms for his doctors. But the jury didn't buy it. Her brother's criminal record sealed the case. The prosecution also uncovered new evidence. Claire's two previous husbands had both died under mysterious circumstances years ago. When investigators exhumed their bodies, traces of poison were found in both. The courtroom gasped as the prosecutor laid it all out, methodically connecting the dots. Claire's tears meant nothing now. The truth was undeniable. The woman who pretended to love had been a predator all along. When the verdict was read, guilty on all counts, Henry exhaled for what felt like the first time in a year. Claire was sentenced to 25 years to life. Her brother got 15. The judge's words echoed through the courtroom. This was a cold, calculated act of greed disguised as affection. Daniel sat beside his father, silent, his eyes wet but steady. Ethan reached for his dad's hand and whispered, "We won, Dad." Daniel nodded slowly. "No, son. You won. You saved us both." Henry looked at them and smiled through tears. "We all did, together." In the months that followed, life found a new rhythm. Daniel sold the old house. Too many dark memories lingered there, and bought a smaller home just a few streets away from Henry's. Ethan decided to stay in Winnipeg permanently, no longer dividing his time with his mother in Toronto. He flourished in school, joined a debate club, and talked about studying criminal justice one day. "I want to stop people like her," he said firmly. Henry smiled. "You already did, son. You're going to make a fine man one day." Henry often found himself reflecting late at night, sitting by his workbench with an unfinished piece of wood in his hands. He thought about the near misses, the what-ifs, the thin line between life and loss. He'd nearly buried his son, and all because of one woman's greed. Yet somehow his family had survived. Every Sunday now, Daniel and Ethan came over for dinner. They'd talk, laugh, and remember Margaret. Sometimes the laughter would fade into silence, but it was a peaceful kind. The kind that reminded Henry how close they'd come to losing everything, and how lucky they were to still have each other. As weeks turned to months, Daniel's strength began to return. He walked daily with Henry along the quiet streets near the river, slowly rebuilding his confidence. One morning he stopped mid-walk and said, "Dad, I keep replaying everything in my head, how I didn't see it, how I let her control me." Henry placed a hand on his shoulder. "Son, that's what manipulators do. They don't just poison the body, they poison trust." Daniel nodded, tears welling. "If it weren't for you and Ethan, I'd be gone." Henry smiled faintly. "No, if it weren't for Ethan, we'd both be gone." Ethan changed too. The fear that once shadowed his face gave way to quiet determination. He started volunteering at a community center, helping younger kids with homework and safety awareness programs. "I want people to know how to speak up when something's wrong," he told Henry one evening. "Maybe they'll listen before it's too late." Henry nodded proudly. "That's your grandmother's heart in you, boy. Brave and kind." The old man could almost hear Margaret's laughter, the way she used to say, "That child will change lives one day." Maybe she had been right all along. Daniel's therapy sessions became a turning point. He faced the betrayal head-on, speaking about it instead of hiding from it. "She fooled me, Dad," he confessed during one late-night talk. "But the truth is, I let her. I wanted so badly to feel whole again after Mom died." Henry's voice was gentle. "Grief makes us vulnerable, son. It opens doors we don't realize are dangerous. But forgiveness, real forgiveness, means closing those doors and learning." Daniel looked at him, eyes heavy with gratitude. "I don't know how you stayed so calm." Henry smiled sadly. "Because I couldn't lose you." The trial's conclusion marked an end, but not closure. Henry still woke sometimes in the middle of the night, hearing Claire's cold laughter in his head. Yet every time he saw Daniel smiling again or Ethan cracking a joke at dinner, that darkness faded a little more. They had survived the storm and were rebuilding brick by brick. On Sundays, Henry made Margaret's favorite stew, and they ate at the same table where the family once gathered. The seat that had felt empty for years now held warmth again. Healing, Henry realized, wasn't a moment. It was a process. Ethan's 17th birthday arrived with laughter filling Henry's modest home. Friends from school came, bringing noise and life back into the walls that had once been silent. Daniel baked the cake himself, slightly lopsided but full of pride. Henry watched them from his chair, smiling as Ethan blew out the candles. "Make a wish, son," Daniel said. Ethan grinned. "Already came true, Dad." Later that night, Henry stepped outside, looking up at the stars. "You'd be proud, Margaret," he whispered. "The boy you loved saved us all." The wind rustled the trees, soft and approving, as if she had heard him. Life became peaceful again. Daniel joined a smaller firm, one that valued his experience and gave him space to recover. Ethan earned top marks in school and was offered a scholarship to study criminal justice at a local university. Henry returned to his woodworking, crafting toys and picture frames for neighbors. On weekends, he and Ethan built birdhouses together, laughing over crooked nails and paint spills. Each project was simple, but to Henry, it felt like reclaiming something pure. Family, love, normalcy. They had lost so much, but what remained was stronger than ever. Sometimes reporters still called, asking Henry to tell the story again. The storage unit, the hidden cameras, the night the police came. He always declined. "It's not about headlines," he'd say. "It's about paying attention." What he wanted people to remember wasn't the scandal but the lesson. Evil doesn't always look like evil. It can smile, cook dinner and call you dad. But love, real love, is louder. It notices when something feels wrong. Asks questions. Acts. Henry wanted the world to understand that courage doesn't always come with a badge. It sometimes comes with age and heart. One quiet evening, as Henry locked up his tools, Daniel came by with 2 cups of coffee. "You still can't sleep without one of these," Daniel said, chuckling. Henry took the cup, grinning. "Not unless I brewed it myself." They both laughed softly, the memory bittersweet. "You ever think about forgiving her?" Daniel asked quietly. Henry looked out the window. "Forgiveness isn't for her, son. It's for us. It's what lets us live free." Daniel nodded. "Then I think I'm ready." For the first time in years, Henry saw true peace in his son's eyes. That Sunday, as always, they gathered for dinner. 3 generations around one table. Ethan talked excitedly about his university plans. Daniel teased him about his cooking skills. And Henry just listened, content. The sound of laughter filled the air like music. He realized then that ordinary moments were the greatest blessings. No secrets, no fear, just family. "To new beginnings," Henry said, raising his glass. "To family," Daniel replied. "And to courage," Ethan added. They clinked glasses together, the sound gentle and sure, sealing their promise to never take peace for granted again. That night, after everyone left, Henry sat by the window, watching the streetlights flicker across the quiet neighborhood. He thought of everything they had survived, the lies, the fear, the near loss. But he also thought of what had saved them: love, vigilance, and a boy brave enough to speak up. "Thank you, Ethan," he murmured. "Thank you, Margaret." Then he smiled, a quiet, content smile only an old man could wear. Life was calm again. The danger had passed, and the family he almost lost was whole. And for Henry Dawson, that was more than enough.